Let me introduce for the next session, self-supervised learning, a breakthrough in machine learning to learn representations from massive unlabeled image or video data. I take this privilege to introduce our speaker, Dr. Mayuri. Dr. Mayuri is a passionate learner, teacher, and researcher. Her research interests include data science, AI, medical image analysis, health informatics, computer vision, and computer algorithms. Her 24 years of professional experience include several academic and research activities achievements. Recently, her AI expertise is recognized by India AI, featuring her in Women in AI series of indianai.gov.in. She was awarded with the Best Teacher Award by the 112 years old philanthropic Sarvajanik Education Society, Surat, on 5th September 2023. She was also awarded the Researcher of the Year Award by 3rd International Business and Academic Excellence Award Committee for her outstanding performance as an academician, researcher, mentor, advisor, and a thought leader. She has 18 patents and 1 copyright to her credit. She has received funds from Student Startup and Innovation Policy, Government of Gujarat, India, for her 7 patents. Ma'am's profile is a very huge, and I take this privilege to welcome you, ma'am, on behalf of ICMAC. Please, ma'am.
Very good afternoon, everyone. I'm sure all of you are awake because Dr. Jyotsna gave us very wonderful talk, and it was very engaging too for all of us. Okay, I thank ICMA committee for inviting me and allowing me to share my views on self-supervised learning, which is a new learning technique in machine learning. I'm not sure that how many of you are acquainted with machine learning, because I can see some students and some conference attendees too. But to get most out of this session, you should have a fundamental understanding of machine learning, because then only you can understand the self-supervised learning. So may I please know that how many of you are very new to machine learning? Because it will help me to decide the depth of discussion for initial few slides. If you are new, then I need to let you know, okay, you are new to machine learning. This side, are you all familiar with machine learning? Okay, and this side, you are new. Okay, I think very few are new to this domains, fine. So let me first explain what is machine learning, and then I shall switch to self-supervised learning. Okay, as we have limited time, I will skip some of the slides. This would be the flow of my presentation. I will start with classical machine learning techniques, specifically supervised and unsupervised learning, and we will see the motivation for self-supervised learning. Then I will discuss self-supervised learning in natural language processing and computer vision. If time permits, then I will discuss SimCLR framework. Otherwise, I will directly switch to use case in healthcare, which is a self-supervised learning-based use case, because it will help you to understand that how exactly we can utilize self-supervised learning. Finally, some challenges and research opportunities would be discussed. Okay, so let us start with brief of supervised and unsupervised learning. These are the main two techniques under machine learning using which machines learn from the data. Now, supervised learning means here we have labeled data. For example, we have a corpus of cat and dog images. Then those images are labeled that this is a cat image and this is a dog image. And machine can learn the features of cat and dog, and machine be able to distinguish between these two types of images because they are labeled that this is cat and this is dog. Okay, so that is called supervised learning because it is under the supervision. Label is a teacher. Labels act as teacher. Unsupervised learning, no labels are available with the available data. And in this case, machines identify hidden patterns from the data and they learn from this unlabeled data. So that is the primary difference between supervised and unsupervised learning. Now let us see the benefits and disadvantages of this both learning techniques. Supervised learning comparatively gives higher accuracy for most of the problems because there we have labeled data, so machines can clearly learn representations from the data. So it's very easy for machine to get that artificial intelligence from this data. But the disadvantages of this supervised machine learning techniques are they are very costly and time consuming. Why are they costly and time consuming? Because as we all know, to make machine do the task which we human do, we need to train them using the data, and for that we need a huge amount of data. Now this huge amount of data, it must be labeled with the domain expert. Now, domain experts, they mostly do not have time in their routine schedule. For example, if I talk about the healthcare, then healthcare professional, they remain very busy because we are highly populated country, and they remain very busy and they don't have time to label the data. So it's very time consuming process. It is costly too. Moreover, labeling process is prone to human errors. Like humans can make error in entering the data, humans can make error in coding and so on. So this is like not very costly and expensive technique supervised, though it provides good accuracy for most of the problems. On the other hand, unsupervised learning, it does not require us to have domain knowledge because we do not label data, so it saves time also. Comparatively, it's cheap compared to this supervised learning. But the disadvantages are, as it is not trained, machines do not learn from labeled data, and machines learn on their own, analyzing that data. They may or may not provide good, accurate outcomes. They may or may not provide accurate outcomes. So that is the limitation of unsupervised learning, and hence it is applicable to limited areas only. So compared to supervised learning, this unsupervised learning provides limited accuracy. Okay, now these are the two kinds of techniques. To overcome the disadvantages of this supervised and unsupervised, semi-supervised technique is also available for learning. Now, what is semi-supervised? I'll tell you in brief. In semi-supervised learning, we have a small set of labeled data and we have a large set of unlabeled data. So here, using that small set of labeled data, machine is trained until machine gives good performance. Now, machine is trained using that small amount of data, and when it starts giving good performance, that trained model, trained machine, it is used to produce to produce label for the unlabeled data in the same data set. Okay, now we cannot accept all those labels. They are called pseudo labels. And these labels, like we can set some threshold, and all the labels having higher threshold, say above 80%, they will be accepted and their labels are added in the input set. So let's assume that initially we had 20% label data. Now when we will add labels having confidence higher than 80, they will be added, and maybe we have now 30% label data. This 30% will again, it will be used to train model. Model will be trained. Again, pseudo labels will be generated. Pseudo labels having confidence higher than 80 will be added, and that way over the iterations, entire data set would be labeled, and this is how we can train the model, and we can even generate the labels for the unlabeled data. This is good application, but its primary disadvantage is that initially when we have a 10 to 20% label data, if that 10 to 20% label data is not representative of the entire distribution, then machine will not learn properly. For example, assume that it is a data set of cat and dogs images, and that 20% labels are available only for cat and none of the label is available for dog. So when initially we are training the machine with the 20% label data, machine will learn only about the cat. Machine is not learning anything about any feature about the dog. So machine may produce biased result for dog also. So that's why this semi-supervised learning, it overcomes some of the disadvantages of supervised and unsupervised, but it is not much useful and it has very, very limited applications because it may or may not produce the desired outcomes. So that is the limitation. Okay, so far we have seen that among these three techniques, two are very useful to process unlabeled data. Two are useful to process unlabeled data, and these two are semi-supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Now, question is then, why do we require self-supervised learning? Why do we require self-supervised learning? Okay, in semi-supervised learning, the problem is converted from supervised to unsupervised. If you remember, I told you that with that 20% data, the machine is trained. Machine is trained with labeled data, so it is supervised learning, right? And we also have 80% unlabeled data, so it is unsupervised problem too, right? So it is a mixture of, it's a combination of supervised and unsupervised, but initially supervised learning and then unsupervised learning. Now, when we talk about the self-supervised learning is different from this semi-supervised learning. This is intermediate between supervised and unsupervised learning. It is intermediate between supervised and unsupervised learning. And here, in contrast to semi-supervised learning, the initial phase is unsupervised learning, and unsupervised problem is gradually converted into supervised learning. Because the title was the next step in machine learning to learn representations from unlabeled data. So here we may have a small fraction of labeled data, or we may have completely unlabeled data, 100% unlabeled data, that is also fine, right? So here initially this technique works in unsupervised fashion, and then it generates pseudo labels, which are also known as supervisory signals, and then the signals are added in the input data set, and then it becomes supervised problem. So here we are like initially unsupervised and then supervised. Okay, so that is how self-supervised learning works. Now, why is it required? This technique is not new. It is there since perhaps 2020s, right? It was initially, it became popular for natural language processing. But in 2020, Jan LeCun, who is a chief AI scientist in Facebook, who also invented very popular convolutional neural network known as CNN, right? So it was invented by Jan LeCun, and he only proved the application of this self-supervised learning for computer vision. So for natural language processing, we were using it in last decade too, but for this computer vision application, since last 4 years, it has been proven very useful. Because in many real life industries, we have today several problems. We have data too, but we don't have labeled data. And those domain experts, they don't have time to label that data, specifically in healthcare. So we have huge amount of data, like we can collect, but if we ask those doctors to label that thousands of records, thousands of MRI, thousands of CT scans, they don't have time, right? So there we can use this self-supervised learning to learn representations from images. Okay, so now what exactly the self-supervised learning is? As we discussed, it is intermediate between supervised and unsupervised. Here we make a model to learn features or feature representations from unlabeled data through pretext task. This is very important word. This is the primary step in self-supervised learning, pretext task. Pretext tasks are the tasks which help us to generate pseudo labels for the unlabeled data. Pretext tasks are the tasks which help us to generate pseudo labels for the unlabeled data. So that is the primary step in self-supervised learning, that it makes model to learn representations from unlabeled data using pretext tasks. It eliminates human interaction while developing labels. Yes, we do not interfere with machine, and it itself draws the label from that available data. And this term self-supervised refers to creating its own creating labels in its own supervision. Okay, so it is usually used to predict past or to predict future and vice versa. Like you can see here, what happened? Yeah, so here you can see the examples, like here pink color represents the past, blue color represents the future, and we also have gray color. So here you can see that predict the future from the past, right? So pink color represents the past and predict the blue color like future from the past. You can also predict the future from the recent past. So this is the recent past, and future will be predicted from this recent past. Predict the top from the bottom. Okay, so here you can see that this is the top, and predict this top from the bottom. So this way we can use like predict the occlusion from the visible thing. So main motto of this technique is find the hidden information from the unhidden information. Find the hidden information from the unhidden information, right? So that is the motto of this self-supervised learning. Under this self-supervised learning, there are two major techniques like contrastive learning and non-contrastive learning. Contrastive learning is highly explored in the research, and you will find a lot of stuff on contrastive learning in literature. But this non-contrastive learning, it is less explored. In this self-supervised learning, like I'll focus mainly on contrastive learning. So what is contrastive learning? It is a function using which the representations are learn, and it uses two kinds of pairs, positive pairs and negative pairs. Now what is positive pair? If you create two patches from the same image, it is a positive pair. But if I take one patch from the one image and the second patch in the pair from the second image, that is the negative pair. It is a negative pair of data. Okay, if I take, for example, okay, apart from this, okay, if I create two augmented views of one image, then it is a positive pair. But I have a one augmented view of one image and second augmented view from the second image, like then it is a negative pair. So there are several such examples. So what it does, it tries to reduce the distance between positive data to minimum, and it tries to increase the distance between negative data to maximum, because it should learn that these are the different objects, different patches, different frames, and it should also learn that these are similar frames, these are similar object. So that's why it tries to reduce the distance between positive data to minimum and increase the distance between negative data to maximum. Okay, fine, I'll not discuss this. So let's see that again, like what's the motivation? Motivation is, this is our self-supervised learning, wherein we have human annotator. You can see that manual annotation is done, but we want to remove this block. And here you can see that this is the corpus of images. Let's say X is our input variable. It represents image. And here we have manual annotator. And then we will have such labels that this is a cat image, this is a dog image, and so on. And then we can feed this XY pair to our machine learning algorithm, and machine learning algorithm will learn कि okay, this is the picture of cat, this is a picture of dog. It will learn features, and then this is how it becomes expert. But we want to remove this block. So we want self-supervised learning, that we are given a corpus of images, it should generate the labels, and then it should use those XY pairs to train the model. So the question is, can we design such can we design the task in such a way that we can generate virtually unlimited labels from our existing images? Existing images means maybe they are domain specific, maybe it's a corpus of all kinds of images collected from internet, right? So it may be specific to some domain, or it may be any corpus of images. So the question is, can we design the task in such a way that we can generate virtually unlimited labels from our existing images and use that to learn the representation? Yes, we can, using self-supervised learning. So these are the two major steps to learn representations from unlabeled data. Rather, we can say that first to generate the labels and then learn the representations. So the first step is pretext task, which is also called supervised type task. If you remember, I told you that in self-supervised learning, the initial phase is supervised, initial phase is unsupervised and then supervised. Okay, so we are given unlabeled data. So what we do, we use some pretext task. Now what is pretext task? I'm going to discuss after this, but there are several pretext tasks available. But here, for example, I have used one pretext task, which is rotation degree. So we can use one of the many available pretext tasks. So pretext task is the task used to generate pseudo labels. For example, I am given a set of images and I want to generate pseudo labels for all those images. So the one way or one type of label can be, I can rotate all those images by certain angle. Assume we are rotating all the images in that corpus by 4 different angles, 90, 180, 270, and then 360 original, or you can say 0 degree. Okay, so what we can do after doing that, our labels would be like this. Here you can see that I am removing this step, and now I am given this corpus of unlabeled data, and here we have like this rotation degree is the pretext task using which this is my original image. So it is rotated by 0 degree angle. This is the image rotated by 90 degree. So here I have used the number 90, like rotation degree is 90. And this is, let's say, image. This is just an assumption. These are not rotated by any degree, these images, right? But let us assume that the one image is there which is rotated by angle 180. So with that image, we will give label 180. So now our X is the given input and Y would be the rotation angle. So what would be our training pairs? image and the angle by which it is rotated. Okay, now suppose I have 1000 images in my corpus and I am rotating all of them by 4 different angles. So for this 1000 images, how many training pairs I'll be able to generate? 1000 multiplied by 4. 1000 multiplied by 4, because I am rotating each image by 4 different angles, and the angle would be the label. So this way there are 1000 images, so 1000 into 4, 4000 training pairs I will generate. What are those training pairs? Given image and rotation angle, right? So if it is rotated by 90, then the label would be 90. So this is the training set I have created. Now when you feed this data set, label data set to machine, it will learn that when the image is rotated, the like ears look like this, or some features like they get different representation. So machine learns the different representations from this rotated images. Okay, I have rotated by 4 angles, but it is not a standard angle size that we can rotate it by 4 angles only. We can rotate by 2 angles only also. We can rotate by 10 different angles also, as per our requirement. Okay, so that way you can also create 10,000 training pairs for your given corpus. Are you getting this, right? Moreover, I am making machine to learn general representations. So I can collect thousands of images or millions of images from internet, and I can rotate all of them to make my data set wider, right? So that machine can learn a like good representation. So we can also do that, and we can make machine to learn some features, okay? But when we are making training set with only angle, angle, degree of angle, it won't learn all kind of features, okay? So if I want machine to learn some different kind of features, then I need to use some different pretext tasks. So we don't have only one pretext task, we have several pretext tasks like this. We have several. Even this list is not complete. This is just a list of some of the pretext tasks. You can use normalization, resize, relative positioning, colorization. I'll discuss some of these pretext tasks, but not all. Okay, so several pretext tasks are available. So based on my requirement, either I can use one pretext task to generate labels, or I can use multiple pretext tasks to generate labels. If I use two, for example, one is say rotation, and second is say colorization. Okay, in colorization, what we do, we are given a corpus of images. We convert using functions. Functions are available in image processing to convert those images into black and white. Okay, so what we will do, we will convert all those images into black and white, and then our training pairs would be black and white image would be X, and the output Y would be the color image. I have generated labels, those X, right? But then it is a black and white, like this is the color image, generate black and white image, and then make that black and white image X and color image Y. Okay, if I give this black and white image to model, it should color that image, and that's why we have been able to make black and white movie. We have been able to convert black and white movie into color, because we are teaching machine that how it should convert. It learns that if it is a sky, the color is always blue. If it is a cloud, the color is always say white. If it is mountain, say color is always like brown or green. So this is how it learns from a huge number of images. Okay, so this way we generate pseudo labels, and we make XY pair, which is called training set. After we train the model, what we do now, the model has been not trained for any particular task. It has been trained collecting millions or thousands of images from say internet. We applied some pretext tasks to generate the pseudo labels. We created training pairs. We made machine to learn from those image training pairs, and now machine has learned only representations. But we have not trained it to identify corona from the X-ray image. We have not trained it to identify some, say, kidney stone from the ultrasound image. We have not trained it for specific tasks. We have trained it in general, that you learn, these are the colors, these are the textures possible, these are the possible shapes, and so on. These are the possible objects. These are the possible sizes of the objects. So from all these images, the machines will learn this kind of general features. Now, after that, once it gets some knowledge about the different kinds of features, if I want to use it for a specific task, say I want to use it to identify corona from a chest X-ray image, then I need to have a small set of labeled X-ray images, a small set of labeled X-ray images. Okay, now we can take help of medical experts to label that small set of X-ray images, using which we can fine-tune the model. We can transfer the knowledge it has received for the specific task. So that is the second step in self-supervised learning, that downstream task, which is known as supervised, which can be supervised or unsupervised. If it is a classification problem, it is supervised. If it is clustering, it is unsupervised. If it is regression, again it is supervised. So it can be, the downstream task can be classification problem, or it can be regression problem, or it can be clustering problem. It can be any. But now once we have trained model generating those pseudo labels, now model has received some feature knowledge, and we can fine tune the model. We can transfer the knowledge it has received for the downstream task. And it may be any, it may be in agriculture, it may be in education, it may be in healthcare, in any domain, right? And but initially we did not collect images of that particular domain. But now for the second step, we should have a small set of label data from that domain, using which we can fine tune the model. Okay, so this is how, and then it becomes able to perform that task, if it is classification, regression, or clustering, or any other. Fine. So this is how it learns. These are the primary two steps of self-supervised learning. Fine. Now let me show you that how, using this concept, how pseudo labels are generated, how machines are trained, and how it is used for the specific real-time task. So in NLP, I'll not discuss much, but I'll show you, okay, these are the various self-supervised learning frameworks available in literature, but we have limited time, so I'll not go in deep. I don't have actually watched, so I'll not come to know that what's the time. I'm sorry to. Okay, fine. So these are the models available. Okay, now let's see some examples in NLP and then in computer vision. In NLP, as I told you, initially self-supervised learning was applied to natural language processing task only, and it has been proven very fruitful for natural language processing. This LLM models, they use self-supervised learning. Okay, so we have now like lot of stuff available in this domain using self-supervised learning. Okay, so how this LLM are trained, like for multiple purposes they have been trained. Okay, and not only LLM, other models have also been trained for specific tasks. So task may be, or task may be any, but what could be the pretext task to train the model? We have a corpus of text, बहुत सारे sentences available है. We want to train machine, then how can we generate labels, and how can we train the machine? So we have text available in the corpus. What can we do? The one pretext task could be, okay, it could be predict the center word given a window surrounding words. So I can pick all the statements available in the corpus, right? I can remove one word, I can provide the surrounding words, and my training pair would be, surrounding words would be X, and the middle word would be Y. Because what we have to do, predict the center word from the surrounding words. So surrounding words may be A and brown. Then what is the middle word? It is quick. So which I am picking, which I am taking from the existing data. I am creating the training pairs. What in my training pair there would be X and Y. What would be X? X is surrounding word which is given. What we want to predict? Middle word. So that would be my Y. So quick would be the Y. Okay, if I want, if the words are given like fox blank over, so it should learn jump should be the center word. So I can create another pair. Even from one sentence, several training pairs can be generated. Now, if I have such millions of sentences, I can generate so many, like thousands of millions of such training pairs, using which you can train the model, and it will gradually learn. Okay, if these are the surrounding words, this would be the, like if I want to say, okay, this is a good college. Okay, so we know that this is a good college, like good I can hide. So see now, just I told you, before some time I told you that from unhidden data, it identify the hidden data. So unhidden data is A and brown. Okay? Unhidden data is A and brown, and hidden data is quick. So it will identify quick. This is one possibility. But the pretext task in NLP could also be like this. There are so many. I have included some, for example. The pretext task could be predict the surrounding word. Just we saw that surrounding words are given, predict the middle word. Now reverse. Middle word is given, predict the surrounding word. So from the same sentence, you can create both kind of training pairs to make your model more accurate. Okay. Okay. Now if we see the next, then from 3 consecutive sentences, predict the previous and the next sentence, given the center sentence. So we are given so many sentences, and we know that for some sentences the order is important. So here we want to find, like we are given like 3, then predict the previous and the next sentence given the center word. Now instead of words, it is sentence. That surrounding sentences are given, predict the center. Similarly, center is given, predict the surrounding sentences. Pretext task could also be predict the previous or the next word given the surrounding words. So any number of training pairs can be generated from even one sentence. I hope you understand. Are you getting these points? Right, that how can we do that? Yes, this side. I hope you are not sleeping. Okay, so this way you can create thousands of pairs to train your model using text data also. Okay, this text data is available, but it is not labeled. So how can you generate pseudo labels and you can train the model? Now the same is possible for like such several pretext examples are available, but I'll skip all them. Okay, now let's see for the computer vision. In computer vision also several images, several natural images are available. Natural images. Okay, it may be fruit image, it may be farm image, it may be some scene image, it may be some classroom image. Okay, so several images are available. And using those images which are unlabeled, I'm training model to get some knowledge from these images. So model will learn representations from those images. Okay, so how can we do one pretext task we saw that given an image, rotate it by different angles and create the training pair. Create the training data set. So here training data set would be, you can see here, training pairs would be rotated image itself and the rotation angle. So this way the training pairs are created. Fine. Okay, so pretext task, okay, fine. So after this, model would be able to, okay, after we train it, it be able to identify the angle of the rotated image if we give it any rotated image. But we don't want to use it for only that task. We also want to use it for some other task. Then we have to fine tune it also. Okay, now this is one possible pretext task, but here also there are such several pretext tasks available. Now second possible pretext task. Second possible pretext task is, again we are given images. Okay, each image is divided into say 9 patches, wherein there is one center patch, and I can create training pairs like this. You can see that training pairs can be image patch and the neighbor. So I can provide one patch and it has to tell me that which is the neighbor patch or what is the number of that patch with respect to certain patch. Okay, so this way even I have only 9 patches in this. How many possibilities are there in this case? So many possibilities are there, right? Because for patch number 1, who are the neighbors? Neighbors are 2, 4 and center patch. For patch number 2, who are the neighbors? 1, 4, center patch, 5 and 3. So for patch number 2, how many training pairs would be created only from patch number 2? How many created? Only from patch number 2, how many training pairs can be created? This is my training pair. Here it is given. Image patch and neighbor. So for patch number 2, who are the neighbors? 1, 4, center patch, 5 and 3. Right? So how many training pairs would be created? 2, 1. 2, 4, 2, center patch, 2, 3, 2, 5. Right? So only from one image, in one image only one patch, this 5 training pairs have been created. If I consider center patch of this image, then how many training pairs would be created? 8. So only for one image, so many such training pairs are created. And if we have such thousands of images, so many training pairs would be generated and they can be used to train the model. It has to learn only features from these images. Fine. Okay, we can also have pretext task. Okay, once it is trained, it becomes able to predict the, like given a patch, it would be able to predict the relative position of that patch. Here you can see, sorry, predict the position of patch B with respect to A if you input two patches A and B. So after this training, it will be able to find the relative position of the patch given with it. Okay. This is a extension of the previous pretext task, jigsaw puzzle. Jigsaw puzzle means you have divided that image into number of patches, right? You are shuffling all those patches and you are asking kid, for example, to order them. It is the similar problem. Okay, 9 patches are created in this example. You can shuffle them. How many ways are there to shuffle the 9 patches? 9 factorial. 9 factorial, if you convert it into number, it becomes how many? 362880, 3,62,000, which is very huge number for one image. Okay, so here what would be the training pair? Shuffled, like sequence of patches in shuffled sequence of patches, and the we expect machine to order all those patches in correct order. They should be ordered. So for that we need to teach it that this can be shuffled group of patches for this given image, and this would be the order. If this is the shuffled, this would be the correct order. If this is the shuffled, because such 9 factorial possibilities are there for the shuffled, right? So we will create all. Okay, now if for one image 9 factorial, can you imagine if I have thousands or millions of images in my data set? So 1 million into 9 factorial, that is 1 million into 3,62,000 something. So that's why it is said that when you work on images or video using such machine learning techniques, you need huge amount of computation power. You need, and that's why GPU and TPU, they have come into existence, right? Graphical processing unit and tensor processing unit, because they are required, because they require huge amount of processing power. And because there are 9 factorial only for one image, it's not necessary to use all those 9 factorial possibilities. If you have good computing resources, it's good that you use all this 9 factorial, because then it will help you to produce more accurate results. But if you don't have, then you can wisely choose some of the shuffled sequences, and they may be 64, they may be 128, and they may be chosen as based on the Hamming distance. If Hamming distance is more, then choose it, because it is like complex puzzle, and then it will learn that if the patches are shuffled like this should be the output of this patches order. What should be the order, correct order? So this way they can be like, this is the pretext task, this using which the machine will learn. And here is the example given. You can see that this would be my training pair, that's shuffled, and then it should give me like, so this is my X and Y. Okay, fine. The next pretext task could be context encoders, which using context encoders, the next pretext task could be in painting. This is in painting. Okay, so what is it? You are given a corpus of images, a set of images is available. What can we do? We can remove a random part of the image. We can remove a random part of the image, and then we can make this X, and this would be my Y. In my corpus, which images are given? These images are given in my corpus. So for each image, I will remove random part, and then I will create, this is X and this is Y. If I give such corrupted image, it should give me such image, like image colored with the proper colors. Now for one given image, you can remove any number of random parts. So it's not necessary that you will create only one training pair from the one given image. I can remove this random part, next time I can remove this part, and so on, right? So again, for more accurate learning, you can create more number of such pairs, and then you can train your machine, it will learn. And later if you provide it, okay, the mountain is corrupted, or mountain is not available properly, and if you feed it, it will color mountain with green color, and it will give you proper output. Okay, so this is also one of the pre-text task in painting. Fine. Okay, then okay, so here you can see that this would be the training pair, corrupted and fixed images. Such several pre-text tasks are available for computer vision too. I'll not discuss all, I'll discuss some of them only. So after in painting, let me discuss only one, because there are many and we cannot complete it. Okay. Okay, this is colorization. This task is known as colorization. You are given a set of images, convert all those images into black and white, and your X would be black and white image and Y would be color image. So we are feeding these pairs, black and white image and color image. So it learns. Okay, for this object it should color blue, for this object it should color green, and so on. So you can see that the training pairs would be grays color and colorized image. So it learns. Okay, and after that, if you provide it input like this, once it is trained, okay, it becomes accurate to color the black and white image, and after that you can provide images like this. Okay, if you provide such black and white image, it will, oh, it went. It will, okay, here this blue color is also not visible. Actually, the blue color is there in this image here. This is white and this is, yeah, yellow. Not yellow, it is light green here, which is not properly visible. It is visible as yellow color. But it learns and it color them. So such several tasks are available. Now the question is, for my given problem, suppose I am working in healthcare, I am given a corpus of images which are unlabeled. How should I determine the pre-text task? So there is no standard formula to determine the pre-text task. You need to study your problem thoroughly. You have to determine that which set of pre-text tasks you will use. Then you need to experiment too. Suppose I use only 2 pre-text tasks, then I use 5 pre-text tasks, then I may use a different combination of 5 pre-text tasks. So that way you have to keep on changing. You have to experiment several pairs, and then you will come to know that which set of pre-text task is more suitable for their application. And you can imagine the amount of time you will take in this experimentation, because for each set of pre-text tasks you will train your model, and which will take much more time, because we have seen that how many training pairs we are creating, and they are even images, and lot of computation time is required. But this is how we deal with such unlabeled data set to solve the real life problems. Okay. I'll now just make you familiar with other pre-text tasks like cross-channel prediction, wherein again we convert it into black and white, and we ask machine to learn the color channels, RGB, or it may be some other panel. Okay. Super resolution means suppose we want machine, if a small image is given, you enlarge it, but the color resolution should be maintained. So when we are given a set of images, what we can do, we can downsample them, and we can create X and Y. This would be my X then, and Y. So machine will learn that if this is the small image, I can enlarge it like this. So it will learn like this, and then later if you provide a small image, it will enlarge it with good resolution, which is called super resolution task. Okay, this is cross-channel prediction again. Okay, deep clustering is also one pre-text task. Synthetic imagery is also pre-text task. So many pre-text tasks are available for computer vision applications. Okay, so this is the summary of this techniques available for computer vision. Now let us see this very popular self-supervised learning framework, which is SimCLR. But rather than this, I'll present a use case, because we have, I think, only half an hour or less than that. Okay, so if I'll cover SimCLR, I'll not be able to cover use case. I prefer I cover use case so that SimCLR will also be covered there. This is the architecture of SimCLR. I'll not discuss this, that how it is working. This is the working of SimCLR, which I wanted to discuss first. Lot of stuff is there in this presentation, but depending on time, I can cover only some of the topics, not all. Because sometimes the same presentation I discuss for 3 hours too. So I need to skip this. Okay, now let's discuss the use case. This is self-supervised learning-based use case, explainable deep learning-based surgical action prediction in minimally invasive surgery. And this work is done by my PhD scholar, Rachna Oza. Okay, so let me first tell you what is this problem. This problem is we are given a set of laparoscopic videos. We want to train machine to predict the next action to be performed in real time. So first we need to train it with videos. Once it is trained, now if I provide, like if the surgery is ongoing, then machine should tell me that which next action should be performed. Action can be stitching, it can be cutting, or it can be any other. 16 types of actions are performed during the surgery. So when this is specifically very useful for new surgeon or the surgeons having limited knowledge. So because they get confused that what should be the next action during the surgery, right? And the right sequence of actions is required when these surgeries are performed. So we wanted to create an automated solution which tells surgeon that which next action should be performed. Fine. So for that, we got the laparoscopic videos of cholecystectomy disease. Surgery, sorry, this is surgery. Actually, this is the surgery related to gallbladder. When gallstones are created in gallbladder, that disease is called cholelithiasis. And when gallbladder needs to be removed due to this cholelithiasis, that surgery is known as cholecystectomy. So that is the name of surgery. So we got a data set of this surgery to train our models, because that is the video of surgery performed. So wherein it learns that, okay, after this surgery, after this action, this is the action performed. After this surgeon, this is the next action performed. So machine learns. Okay, so this was the objective of the research, to develop a surgical action predictor with explanation for the prediction of the next surgical action to assist the surgeon in real-time surgery. Fine. Along with that, these were also the objectives, that to detect the surgical tool, to classify surgical action, to improve the accuracy, and so on. Okay, so now let me tell you that how we solved this problem. We wanted to predict the next action, and labeled data set was available. So there is no problem. Data set is labeled with action. We can use supervised learning, and we can make machine be able to predict the next action. We did it. When we did it, we realized that it is not giving us good accuracy to predict the next action. So that time we referred to the literature, and we referred to the solutions available on this problem, and we came to know that if we can map surgical tool with the surgical action, then the prediction of action would be more accurate. Because we know that if we first identify the tool, for example, needle, then only stitching can be performed. If we identify scissor, then the next action would be cutting only, right? So we thought, let us first identify the tool, and then let us identify, because then it narrow down the problem. If there are 16 actions, but if I identify that scissor or say knife, then the action can be cutting, right? So out of 16, like, it narrow down. Okay, this is only the possibility with this tool. But now how to detect the tool to find the action? Because these videos are not labeled for the tools. Videos are labeled for the actions, but they are not labeled for the tools. So we thought, like, that time we were searching that is there any, like, we were knowing unsupervised learning, but we were referring to literature, and we came across this self-supervised learning technique during 2020. And then we thought, let us apply it, and let us check that will we become able to identify tool with this self-supervised learning. So we became able to identify tool with this self-supervised learning, and then based on tool we identify the next action. And then we saw that when we use this, like, after tool detection, if we identify the action, we got higher accuracy, and without tool detection the accuracy was different and low. So we proposed a solution with self-supervised learning. So you can see that these are the major steps of this solution. That first we collected data, then we pre-processed data, then we identify the features of surgical tools and features of surgical actions. Then we combine those features based on attention mechanism, and then the action is identified. So I'll show you all these steps one by one here. Data we used from 3 sources. Like we identified several data sets, and we came to know that we were working on laparoscopic surgery data set. So there were 2 possibilities. Either we can work with synthetic data sets, or we can work with real anatomy data set. But we got this real anatomy data sets from one challenge. All these 3 we received from that challenge only. Like we participated in one challenge, and they gave us surgical action 160, this collect T80 and collect T50. So we got these data sets, and these data sets are labeled for actions, not for tools. These are the details of data set. You can see that these are the 3 data sets. This is the name of source in which they were published. This is the location where they are available. And you can see the modality, video and image. Okay. And here you can see that in this video, in the first data set, 16 actions were there. But these videos were labeled with only 7 actions. And these images were also labeled with 7 actions. Okay, so we use these data sets, and here you can see the types of actions possible during the surgery. These are the 16 types of actions. Okay, so actions are labeled, but now we first want to identify the tool, and for tools, labels are not available. So we thought of using self-supervised learning. The second step is, after getting data, the second step was pre-processing, and this pre-processed images were fed for a 2 model to extract the features. Okay, now here you can see the 2 parts. Like this is surgical tool detection, and these are the 7 tools available in surgery video, and this is surgical action feature detection for surgical actions, and those actions are labeled for 16 different actions. Okay, so here I'll show you that what we did to extract the features of surgical actions and what we did to extract the features of surgical tools. To extract the features of surgical action, several models are available. We can use the straightforward CNA or pre-trained CNA or some other models, right? But we first, when we referred to some papers, we identified one combination CNN plus RNN, so we used it. But then we were not satisfied with accuracy. So we found like other 2 models we proposed we can use either this or this, and we observed, we experimented, and we got good results. So this is just to extract the features of action, and they are available models. Like there is no contribution from our side. We use the existing model to extract the features. After that, like here you can see, this is our custom CNN we used to extract the features from these images, and we got these features. Okay. After that, this is the performance. Like we experimented with several models, and here you can see these are the models, CNN models we used, and we got good results with MobileNet V2. So we finally used it. Okay. Fine. Okay. Now you can see that ये performance है. Now for tools. For tools, we use self-supervised learning because labels are not available for tools. So self-supervised learning was used. So here, this side, you can see the framework we proposed for self-supervised learning. If I would have discussed SimCLR, then you would have noticed that SimCLR used only, which is the first framework. Later, you can Google and you can see the citations of SimCLR, though it was proposed only 4 years back. So that was the very simple but very effective framework, and based on that SimCLR, we proposed our own framework, MultiCLR, and you can see that here we used the combination of 5 pretext tasks. Now these are not randomly chosen, okay? A set of pretext tasks is available. We experimented with different combinations, and as this combination was giving good results, we freezed this set of features, set of pretext tasks. So we created for all the given videos, frames were created for all the frames. This pretext tasks were used, labels were generated, the training data was created, and we used a model, we trained a model using that label data. So this is, you can see, and after, like once we got this tool features, and you can see here, FT represents the tool features and FA represent the action features. So then those features are combined. And attention, like 50% attention is given to tool features and 50% attention was given to the action features. And then we identified the next action. So here you can see the same, like here you can see that how we did it. Okay, this is the whole framework. But this is self-supervised learning, like entire block represent, this is self-supervised learning, the middle block. But as SimCLR is not discussed, the steps are from SimCLR. This step, okay? Okay, so here you can see the results. After combining those features, like when we experimented, here you can see that our proposed multi-CLR was giving good results compared to SimCLR. You can see that SimCLR uses normalization and resize, while we use this 5 pretext tasks. So our results are better than, like accuracy is better than SimCLR here, because we are using more number of pretext tasks. So better training would be provided to model, and so it will perform more accurately. Okay, and here you can see, like this is the normal data set, like general purpose data set, and surgical actions 160 is the data set which we used. So we experimented with both kind of data set, one from medical domain and one general, that to check whether this proposed multi-CLR performs well or not. Fine, so it gave us good performance. And here you can see that we not only experimented with only different pretext tasks, we also experimented considering different loss functions. So here you can see that second column represents the different loss functions. So for our proposed multi-CLR also, we tested 5 loss functions, and that angular triplet loss gave us good results. So we finalized it like angular triplet loss for the further experiments. Fine. Okay. So now here you can see that that multi-CLR is providing, okay, not only with different loss functions, we also experimented with ResNet 50 and FUCNN, right? Because multi-CLR is the extension of SimCLR, and in SimCLR authors used ResNet 50. So we checked with ResNet 50 also, and we checked with FUCNN also, and ours was giving like good good result in terms of number of parameters. Like when you use ResNet 50, the number of trainable parameters, they were 24 million. But when we used FUCNN, the number of trainable parameters were 11.8 million, which is a drastic reduction in number of trainable parameter, which in turn reduces the training time. Okay. So after that, once we got the features of the surgical tools and surgical actions, they were combined 0.50, 0.50. And after that, like you can see that 0.50, 0.50 here also, like randomly, this is not chosen. We experimented with 4 different ratios, and then we noticed that, okay, this is giving good result. So we finalized the 50% attention was given to action features, and 50% attention was given to tools features. And this is not related to, last step is not related to self-supervised, because that is the part of our research work. Like we generated explanations too. It is explainable AI, which is not a focus of this today's discussion. So I'll skip it. Explanations are generated for the generated outcomes. Okay. So now I will show you, like first I showed you the results of only that middle part, surgical tools and surgical action detection. Now, if I show you the results of this whole, considering the multi-CLR, then here you can notice that this proposed SEPEX, it gave good performance for all the different data sets. As I showed you, that 3 data sets were considered, and surgical action 160, collect T80 and collect T50. Here numbers have some significance. 160 is because that data set includes 16 videos and each video is labeled with 10 actions. So 16 into 10, and that's why that data set is known as surgical action 160 data set. And similarly, colic 50 and colic 80, 80 and 50, they represent the number of videos available in that data set. So here you can notice that with self-supervised learning, these are the existing solutions available for this next action prediction, but they were not using self-supervised learning. They were predicting next action based on only action features. And as I discussed, these data sets are labeled for actions, but not labeled for tools. So they did not detect tool, and their performance is like 90.2, 89.9, and 90.59. But if you see the test accuracy also, like here, it is comparatively less. But when you use it, like when we use self-supervised learning to detect tool, we are getting comparatively good performance for both training accuracy and testing accuracy. Yeah, I think it's all. Yes. Okay, these are some challenges, like we discussed that we can use any combination of pretext tasks if we are working in natural language processing or we are working in computer vision, fine? But it is very difficult to determine that which set of pretext tasks should be used. And as I told you, there is no shortcut. You have to perform exhaustive experimentation with different set of pretext tasks. Why it is exhaustive? Because the data set, training data set would also be massive and it requires like high amount of computation power. So high amount of computation power is required, reliability concerns, then selection of suitable pretext task for an application. Next, there is no gold standard for comparison of learned feature representations. Okay, we discussed that self-supervised learning technique learns features from the unlabeled data. But if we want to validate that whether these learned features are correct or not, there is no way, right? There is no way. And the next is selecting a suitable loss function, since there is no single objective. So that is also the challenge. Okay, so that's all about the self-supervised learning, like how we can process unlabeled data, whether it is a text unlabeled data or image unlabeled data or video unlabeled data. We can use self-supervised learning to label that data during the first phase and then use the labeled data to train the model in supervisory fashion. Okay, these are the books published by us in healthcare domain. So those who are working in healthcare domain, they can refer to these books which are published by Springer with my co-editors. Your explainable AI book is also available. Like if you want to learn about the explainable AI, you can refer to this third book, Explainable AI Foundation, Methodologies and Applications. And specifically, if you want to learn the use of explainable AI in healthcare domain, then the middle one would be the most appropriate. Yeah. That's all from my side. You can connect me on LinkedIn, and I'm fine now to take your questions. Any questions? Like, I know very limited audience, but if you have any question. No? Yeah. No, it's not fixed, madam. It is only an example. I considered 90, 180, but it can be any as per our requirement. For example, I'm working on, for example, I have a corpus of ultrasound images of kidney and I want to detect kidney stones. Now I may have a small set of data which is unlabeled too, and the stones are located only on the upper part of the kidney. But the stones may also be there in the lower part or in some left or right side. So we can use the different angles to create the different training samples. So as per our requirement and as per the availability of the data, we can thought of the size of angle, degree of the angle, sorry. Yeah. Any more question? Yeah, I didn't show you, no, this, like, okay. So this is the performance actually. That this is the actual action and it was predicting that one. Yeah, fine, over, huh? Thank you everyone for patiently hearing me and being the nice audience. Thank you so much.
Actually, some of the audience, they have joined online.
Uh-huh.
Okay, after Corona, everyone is busy.
Yeah.
They don't want to move from their places. They are sitting in their place and watching, listening to this talk, ma'am. So thank you for sharing your wonderful experience to all of us. So I request Dr. C. Kirmai ma'am and Dr. Sachinarayan sir, please honor our guest.